Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar on unlocking the power of AI with the Microsoft Power Platform. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you're getting more sun than I am right now. The clouds have come over, but fingers crossed when this finishes, it'll all come back out and we can enjoy it on a Thursday afternoon going into the bank holiday. So today I'm going to take you through a high-level overview of the AI-based functionality available in the Microsoft Power Platform and how it can be used to leverage that power and capability within your business. As I mentioned in the chat, we did run a webinar last week, which was on the Microsoft Power Platform in general. That has been recorded and is available on YouTube if you want to go back and look at that. I will touch on the Microsoft Power Platform a little bit later on in this webinar, just to give you a brief introduction of the high level, but this is mainly focusing on the AI capabilities. So let's see if Teams is going to work when I click the button. There we go. So the agenda for today, I'm going to do some introductions, who GreenSparks is, who I am, why you should listen to what I'm saying, and how I can help you. Then I'm going to take you through Microsoft Copilot Studio as one of the tools from the Power Platform. Then introduce the Microsoft AI Builder, which is a low-code implementation of some of the more advanced features. I am going to touch on the pro-code AI capabilities available from Microsoft and how they work with the low-code capabilities of the Power Platform, because it's important to note that you are not stuck in a rigid platform with this technology. Talk a little bit about the benefits and potential ROI of using AI within your business. It's quite a broad field, but I will try and narrow down to some of the more simpler aspects and why businesses of any size, but in particular SMBs, should be paying attention as much as an enterprise should. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about the general Power Platform, just as a sort of lightweight introduction to the wider tool sets that GreenSpark specializes in, and what the benefits are of using a low-code system. I'll explain what low-code is. I am sharing a slide deck, Craig. Anybody else drop into chat? Can you see what's on the screen? I'll carry on, but we might have to do a little restart. Thank you, Tom. Then I will go on to talk a little bit about stories for some real-world examples, all available on Microsoft's website. And then lastly, a Q&A to follow up. Yeah, try logging in and out, Craig. We'll wait a couple of minutes just to give you a chance there. Everybody else still getting the visuals, I take it, so that's good. It's unfortunate there's always one that has the problem. I think. Thank you, Kate. And I think, right. Any luck this time, Craig? Are you seeing the agenda slide? Otherwise, you must be staring at just my mugshot in the avatar, which has got to be really depressing for you. Oh, that's unfortunate, Craig. Like I said, it's being recorded, so I'll make sure I send you the link, and hopefully you're just gonna have to use some imagination and just imagine everything I'm showing you is just so crazily wonderful that you must find out more about it. Right, so quick introduction. GreenSparks, who are we? We are a small independent consultancy based in Warwickshire. There's just a few of us, permanent and a mixture of independent contractors, so we can cover large and small projects. I've spent most of my life in Warwick, that's why we've set up here. Our specialties are the Microsoft Power Platform, AI, but we also do business applications, data engineering, analytics, and you'll see from myself a little bit of data science and machine learning. We specialize in the SMB space. That's not to say we won't work with anybody. We can help enterprise. A lot of us have a background in that area for the industries, but we do feel that SMBs have the greatest potential and perhaps the greatest need of our services. And a lot of us have either worked in small companies or ran small companies, so we actually understand some of the unique challenges that you experience at those levels. So that's a bit about GreenSparks. Myself, Simon Foote. Over 18 years in software development now. I actually started in Warwick as a T-boy and later became a web developer And then over my careers, I spent the last 15 years or so working on Microsoft Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. If you've heard of either of them before, you'll know they are virtually the same platform, just different implementations. I also have a background in business intelligence, data engineering and machine learning. I also did some data science training, which is why I have a bit of a more interest in the AI space as much as building software itself. And I think it's safe to say that my passion is creating innovation through technology. I get a lot of satisfaction from helping businesses succeed by introducing technology. It's the kind of things that interest me and excite me is how cool technology can be, the kind of difference it can make. So I get to do that for a living. It's not a bad life for me. So we'll dive into the technology now. So I'll introduce Copilot Studio. It's important I mention now that, like a lot of Microsoft products, they share the name across many individual or independent bits of software. Copilot, very popular name at the moment. So I'll just do a quick introduction to some of the types you may have heard of and what this is and isn't. So there is Copilot. If you've downloaded the free app for your phone or tablet, or you use a Windows machine, like a good 70% of us do, you will have Copilot that runs on here. That is either Copilot, just called Copilot, or M365 Copilot. They are the kind of usages for productivity. So you can chat with an agentic AI to help you do things with your business, answer questions. It uses things. It's basically ChatGPT under the hood. That is one version. That is not this. There is a Copilot for GitHub, which is used by software developers to write code and build applications. This is not that either. There are a couple of other versions tied into some of their products, like the Dynamics 365 implementation. Copilot Studio was formerly called Power Virtual Agents. It is a member of the Power Platform itself. And what this does is it allows you to use no-code tooling to build AI chatbots, which sounds perhaps a little bit complicated, but also a lot simpler than what you may have heard. But in reality, it uses drag and drop interfaces, highly visual ways to access it rather than code in order to compile that chatbot. But under the hood, it's powered by the same Azure AI models, things like ChatGPT, any of the Microsoft, including the other third-party data LLM models, to drive this chatbot. And it allows you to configure it with certain capabilities and actions. So you can create a tailored chatbot. You can also use it to create new features for those existing Copilots that I've just mentioned. So the one that runs on your machine or on the app, the one that lives in Teams, or the one that runs in GitHub. Copilot Studio allows you to edit that and add more functionality that's either specific to your task as an individual, as an employee, or perhaps you need something that works with the business. And exclusive for everybody on the call, GreenSparks is about to release its own virtual chatbot, its own AI-powered agent to help work with the business itself. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, you'll see towards the end of next week an announcement of our newest AI-powered employee that you'll be able to interact with yourself either via our website, through email, or through chat. So if you'd like to play with a Copilot and experience what it can do, look out for that. It's currently undergoing testing. Had a few minor bugs, as most bits of software does, but we're pleased that it is already working quite well. So, like I said, towards the end of next week, there'll be an announcement on that. So the purpose of Copilot Studio is for creating AI-driven agents, and you will use them to act as either personal assistants within your organization, or as I've just mentioned, GreenSparks is going to have a virtual assistant which operates on our website and talks to our customers. You can also use it for augmenting employees within the business, either as a knowledge source or something that can perform certain tasks. Some examples and features of Copilot Studio would be AI-driven search of knowledge bases. So, for example, if you have a very detailed website, a large SharePoint implementation with documents in it, or you use cloud estates like Azure, you can train with Copilot Studio an AI agent to search that information far more efficiently than perhaps an average human using search and typing on a keyboard would. It has natural language processing capabilities. You might have heard the term LLMs being thrown around, which is these large language models that understand what we're saying when we talk to it or type in it. Copilot Studio is backed by that, and as I mentioned, it uses ChatGPT and other various models. Copilot Studio can do task automation. You can train it in certain actions and activities that you want it to perform. For example, the GreenSparks virtual agent, you can request a callback and it will send an email to us and ask someone like a real human to pick up a phone. You can ask it to book a meeting and it will look through calendars and find appropriate times. It can find information on a website and share the URL with you so you can get to it. So that kind of automation of tasks, things that you would normally ask a person to go and do for you, they can do that. And then lastly, multi-channel deployment. That's a key feature of Copilot Studio in that where it's deployed so people can use it, it's not just something that floats in a virtual container in the internet. Copilot Studio provides very quick ways to deploy it, such as a chatbot, or to put it in your phone, or to have it answer emails for autonomous agents. And the button doesn't work. Okay, and so why would you build with Copilot Studio? So perhaps you want to boost its knowledge capabilities by connecting it to your existing data and information. I mentioned SharePoint, but there's other methods that you can use, such as Dataverse in the Power Platform, or a SQL Server database, large files, PDFs. That way you can create access to multiple different sources of knowledge and bring them together in one collective space. So rather than asking your employees or your customers to search in multiple spaces for what they're looking for, Copilot Studio can source them in one place and find more pertinent information faster. I mentioned about designing those actions, but you can also create different triggers. So a trigger could be something where you create a record in a database, you add a file to a share, or you receive an email or a text message. These triggers can be set up to create those touch points within your business or with your customers. And it can do that using simple methods such as whenever an email comes through, or they can be more complex using AI and natural language processing to read the contents before it responds and it determines how to act. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other parts of the platform, but Copilot Studio works with these other tools that gives it access to other pre-built connectors. So whilst I've mentioned Microsoft sources, these connectors give you access to tens of thousands of other tools that are not just Microsoft. So things like SAP, Facebook, Zoho CRM, HubSpot. All of these modern platforms have APIs and someone's created connectors for them. And if there isn't one, anything that has a modern API, you can create a custom connector for. So it's very common in your business to have software assets that are not all Microsoft and they're not all one particular manufacturer or another, that you tend to spread your reliance across different tools, or you pick the best tool for the job. Copilot Studio can interact with all of them. There's virtually no restrictions, certainly not from the Microsoft side. So that way you don't have to upgrade your software in order to bring it together. You don't have to change your platform or create new subscriptions. You can integrate with them and across them. And it can also be used to link those two platforms together. So if you have a HR system that runs on the web and you have a payroll system that runs more locally or on a server, Copilot can interact with the two and create the bridge. And then lastly, agents can operate independently. I mentioned it briefly on the last slide, autonomous. There's a lot of new features have come out in the past few weeks because it is Microsoft's 50th anniversary and it is currently their AI Skills Fest. So lots of announcements coming thick and fast. One of those is the ability for them to work completely autonomously. So you don't need to wait for a customer to go to a website. They can act on emails or on schedules, react to data that changes. And they can also now communicate with each other. I recognize Tom from the previous webinar. I mentioned MCP, so I'll get in there nice and early. Model Context Protocol is a wonderful framework created by Microsoft that allows agents to talk to each other and to other bits of information and data. It creates like a common set of mapping and capabilities that can have that. And now we've reached the point where other agents can now communicate directly without bouncing through another system or another human. Sounds scary, and it perhaps has the potential to be, but generally speaking, we're now reaching a point where agents are very good at doing one thing that they're trained for, such as writing content or automating tasks or helping your customers find information. We now have the ability for them to hand off information to each other. So example, a customer might go to your website, talk with the Copilot and says, I'm looking for information on some products I purchased from you last month. It might be able to hand that off to another agent that specializes in searching through your accountancy software or your ERP system where your orders were, and it might be able to find that information and follow up and have these exchanges. And another thing to point out, with Copilot Studio is that they do get better as they're used, they learn, there is that artificial intelligence sort of basis, but there's always a point, and the GreenSparks will always make the point to create escalation paths for you so that can move from the agent to a real human being. Much as they are great and they answer 90% of people's questions, sometimes you just need a human to step in. It's important you create a joined up process that does that, and Copilot has a great way of doing that. And then one last point about Copilot Studios, I mentioned deployment channels. I don't know how big the picture is, and unfortunately for some of you can't see the pictures, but there are at least 15 channels available at the moment. Teams, Skype no longer exists, but that was Slack if you use internal systems. Facebook, that's available. You can deploy to websites, and again, another more recent announcement is Microsoft has updated the ability for Copilots to talk to people on the phone. So whilst you might start by chatting to a Copilot on a website, perhaps if someone has a visual impairment or there's a problem with what they're trying to do with their computer or the keyboard, it can be now sent to call you on a phone, and the quality of the technology has now reached a much better level than it was even just a few short months ago, that now you can have a conversation with the agent, still have the same functionality, and that's available for the Copilot Studio. It's not something that we at GreenSparks have to invest heavily to build. We build the agents to do the functionality you require, and then we can enable this feature. So it's moving at quite a pace. I should mention there is a Q&A at the end of this, but if anybody does have any burning questions, please drop them in the chat. I can see that, and I will try to keep an eye out. If not, there's a dedicated section, so please take a note and be ready to drop them in. So next we'll talk about AI Builder. Now, AI Builder is one of the smaller products of the platform, and what it's designed to do is give low-code capabilities to professional coding functionality that you would typically associate with machine learning. So examples of machine learning would be the ability to classify text, to build predictive analytics, to do form processing and like enter data, things like scanning receipts and invoices. Now, these are all coming from machine learning algorithms. Now, AI Builder makes it easy to integrate that with the Power Platform without having to be a data engineer or a data scientist. Now, the tool itself has access to some pre-built models already, things that come from the Azure Machine Learning Studio, or what used to be called Azure Cognitive Services. So they're pre-trained, pre-built models that are very good at doing very specific things, like I said, scanning receipts or finding anomalies in data, translating text from one language to another. It's also possible to build custom models with it as well. So now you have the ability to have a data engineer and a data scientist available within your development capabilities without actually needing to hire them. And you're building these on top of pre-built models that Microsoft has made available. The way we use AI Builder at GreenSparks is we would typically be building a piece of software and an application such as a CRM, customer research management tool, or an ERP, enterprise resource planning, something that helps your business run that's in a more traditional sense. But then we can leverage these pre-built models and machine learning capabilities to enrich the processes in the back. So for example, you might have a system that takes expense receipts from your employees. We've all used some of those tools, I'm sure, in our current or past lives. Now, you would manually have to enter the details that are on a receipt and then attach a picture, and then you'd submit them. What we can do with AI Builder is we can build the tool that allows you to upload those receipts just as you were claiming your expenses, but instead of having to enter all the lines, AI Builder could scan the receipt, extract the line details, and you could just approve it. You could just look at it and go, that looks correct, that's what's on the receipt. That creates a productivity enhancement. It would save you a lot of time because your employees wouldn't have to sit there manually entering lines. Another example, do the same thing with invoices. If you deal with a large number of invoices from your external providers, typically they would be emailed to you, so someone would have to sit and read an email box. Well, we can use AI Builder and some of the other parts of Power Platform to monitor their inbox, and as invoices come in, it will scan the invoice, it will extract the data into a table, and then that can be routed or processed either by a human or as necessary. So it's a way of improving or adding AI and intelligent capabilities to either custom apps you're building, but you can also do it with existing processes. I mentioned about those connectors before that allows you to talk to different parts of other software. You can integrate them between different parts. Well, this allows you to introduce those AI capabilities into those processes or workflows. Again, doesn't have to be Microsoft. It could be a third-party system. Perhaps you are transferring data from a stock management system into an accounting system just to keep the records in sync. You can use AI Builder in that downstream or upstream to enrich the data or process it or track it using these pre-built models. I'm going to touch on the pro-code side of AI now. And although this is predominantly aimed at Power Platform and low code, there is a space where pro-code meets the two. So again, I've been mentioning those thousands of connectors that you can create. That uses one of the other tools of the Power Platform called Power Automate. Power Automate is a workflow tool that allows you to create integrations, approvals, automations, or robotic process automation, people might know it as. And because it has all of these connectors, these abilities to connect up to other services, or you can create your own custom ones, that means we can ingest the pro code Azure AI capabilities. So some of the examples of those pro code would be Azure AI Foundry is the latest incarnation of the tool, very incredible tool that allows you to develop and deploy many models that you have access to for, and not just Microsoft, there's all of the metaverse ones. You can have access to the third-party stuff from OpenAI as well. So perhaps you would prefer to work with machine learning and data science experts, AI engineers, who would be creating these pro models so they can have access to something. A better example would be the DALL-E model, which is very good at image generation. So perhaps you want to create a tool for your employees that generates image, let's say for marketing is a good example. There's nothing available in the low code space that quite does that the way you want. So you would work with the pro engineers, the AI engineers to create this model and deploy it. But then you could come back to the Power Platform and use the low code tools to integrate them either into your applications or your automations or in between your systems. So there's very much a space for that pro technology. I did mention a couple of other ones here. There's the Azure Machine Learning Studio. So if AI Builder doesn't have the model you're quite looking for and you want to create something more custom trained on your data, perhaps you have some very unique information about system sensors and you want to create some maintenance, predictive maintenance stuff, you could build that in Azure Machine Learning, but then ingest it again into the low code. And that could be part of an application, an automation. It could also be enriched into a Copilot AI. So now you could have a chat with an AI agent about perhaps what may be going on with your machinery that might be throwing up some weird issues from its sensors that might indicate that maintenance is required or there's a fault. So again, the lines are blurring between traditional applications and how you would work with them and how AI agents can assist employees and customers. So again, I mentioned that this will work with Microsoft and third-party platforms. So therefore, you can integrate this into existing solutions and workflows, not just new stuff that you've built. So it's a way of taking perhaps an existing investment you have in your software, something you rely heavily on that you don't have the space or financing to change it, to move on from it, but you can enrich it with these pro code capabilities. So it opens up the possibilities for AI across every aspect of your business. So what are the benefits of using AI? Why would you use AI at all? I'm sure many of us ask that question, especially if you come from an SMB organization. Enterprise have been doing this already for a number of years. I think the estimate is something around 74% of enterprises are already doing something with AI, whereas it's closer to 24% in the SMB space. Well, I mentioned some examples there about automating repetitive tasks, things that agents can now start doing certain functions when it comes to interacting with your customers or assisting your employees. So it's about streamlining your processes. That translates to time saved, and it allows your staff to focus more on where AI and software doesn't help you. Enhances productivity and efficiency, so that's very similar. You can actually use it to give people capabilities that perhaps they wouldn't have had before. I use this a lot for non-technical things because I'm happy working with software and building solutions for people, but when it comes to the more softer skills like generating content or writing slide decks, for example, AI is very good for increasing my productivity, helping me get ideas, and it does actually have some applications when it comes to architecture. So if I'm trying to find a more novel approach, AI can help me with that. There's improvement to customer service and engagement. Now, this is an interesting topic that I could probably do an entire webinar on. Not everybody wants to talk to a robot, but it's getting to the point where it's much better quality now. You can have a more rich conversation with the agent. Personally, I don't think AI is going to replace people. I think the human touch is always going to be important to us as humans, but there are certain interactions that can be automated, and that does improve the customer experience. So if you're having a conversation with somebody on a customer service line, they can be using AI to source information from a knowledge base that perhaps they don't possess and help get to a customer resolution quicker. They can trigger off those automated tasks that might go and fetch some paperwork or forward something to a customer that they're waiting for. Or perhaps if they're calling about a digital service, such as your internet's not working very well, AI can go and trigger those tests to make sure that your broadband connection is performing as you expect whilst talking to a human. So I think that there's a lot of touch points for AI and automation that do enrich the customer experience, even if it's not directly talking to them. And of course, 24/7 support, depending on what your product or service may be in your business, or I do believe some people on the call work internationally, so you have different time zones. Much as some of us would like to be able to work 24 hours a day, we can't. AI and chatbots and automations can work 24 hours a day, so therefore they can be available when your customers need them, where they need them. So that allows you to extend a capability that you as a small business or a medium business might not be able to provide with humans sat on phone lines or on keyboards, and it can enrich them. And then lastly, competitive advantage. So I gave a couple of statistics there. If you need the references for that, please reach out. I can go and find them for you. Forrester, Gartner, and some other places provide them. Microsoft themselves are very good. But yeah, if 74% of enterprises are doing this, large enterprises, and some SMBs are moving that space, can you afford not to be trying to keep up with that innovation and improving your positioning in the market and being more adaptable? Allowing your staff to achieve more, your employees to do more with the technology. That's a good way of leveraging more of your investment. If you've spent money on tools and equipment, getting more out of them, extending their life, making them perform better, does give you an advantage in business. So some potential ROI, and I say potential, it's all about what technology you implement and where you implement it will determine the return on your investment. And there's plenty of good data supporting this and stats for you. Potentials, operational cost savings is a good one. If you can reduce the perform or improve the performance of machinery because you're tracking it through sensor data and performing maintenance when you need to, that can save you costs when it comes to your production or your investment in that equipment. Resource optimization, I've just given a load of examples about how that can help individuals achieve more within your organization. Get more out of your employees without asking them to perhaps do more can always be a benefit for everybody. Revenue growth. If you can access more customers faster, deal with more customers, as agents can often do, the potential for increasing your revenue is very much there. Enhancing customer service, that's always important when it comes to customer retention. We like a good quality of service. We remember companies that do that for us. It's really important to track your implementations. Copilot Studio has a wonderful dashboard built into it that tracks the interactions that people have with it and the success rate. How often does it escalate? How often does it have to hand off? How many things can it solve without reaching a real human being? So it's a very important way to do that, to make sure the investment and time you're putting into the technology is working for you. We can do the same thing with all of the processes around AI Builder. We can track Microsoft for Surfaces, a lot of information, a lot of analytics on the functionality, to the point where we can work out how much time it's saved, and then you can put a monetary cost to that. KPIs are very important. A lot of people could and should drive their businesses based around those key performance indicators. I would point out part of the Power Platform is Power BI. I'm going to cover it on the next slide, but it allows you to generate real-time dashboards from data. You can plug in the data that is coming from your AI implementations, from your RPA and workflows, so you can actually see the return you're getting on those investments. And then, of course, there are more granular types of analytics you can do for ROA, such as sales conversion rates, customer retention, and average order value, seeing what kind of upsells are increased by having AI recommending products to your customers as they're shopping, and perhaps creating an upsell. And generally speaking, Power Platform has some wide-ranging statistics, but I think I have some on the case studies. Some customers have managed to get their 50% of their investment back within as little as a few months of implementing some of this technology. With AI, that's only getting faster. And that kind of it's exponentially increasing the kind of value you get. So it's not really about how much it's going to cost you, it's more how much are you going to save in the long run that you apply this. Oh, we're making good time. I said I would talk about the Microsoft Power Platform, and again in the chat, if you missed last week's webinar, it's on YouTube channel. You can go and watch that. We talk about the wider Power Platform and how these tools can be implemented, what low code is, and why we do low code development at GreenSparks. But I'll just give you a brief overview. The core products are on the right hand side, and in true Microsoft fashion, everything has a similar name. So it's Power Apps. These are your different types of application, whether that's a traditional CRM style interface in a web browser, or you can build mobile apps for your phone and tablets. Power Automate, we did cover briefly, is the workflow RPA tool. Allows you to create integrations, approval processes, link different technologies together in integrations, and as I said, integrate things like AI Builder. Power BI is probably one of the more popularly known items, because Power BI also lives in another platform called Microsoft Fabric. It is a reporting and analytics tool. It's for creating data models and dashboards. It still follows the same ethos of being a low-code tool, but again, it has very powerful use cases. Professional business intelligence developers can use Power BI as much as somebody that doesn't have a background in data. Power Pages is the web portal facing technology. So if you build an application to help manage your customer service, it's very likely that you will want the ability for your customers to access their own data, such as their address, and update it. You don't want to give them access to the tool that your business runs on. So Power Pages is a low code web portal creation tool. So again, if you need to put together a website that is powered by the same technology underneath, content management systems, customer service portals, that's where Pages comes in. Copilot Studio I've mentioned, formerly Power Virtual Agents, but this is your chatbot implementation of AI. And then across the bottom is the supporting functionality. They tend to be used in conjunction with the other stuff. And when we build solutions, we don't just pick one of these technologies, we pick a combination of them to solve the problem. Data connectors, I mentioned there's tens of thousands now. I think we might have almost hit 100,000 connectors. And they could be everything from third-party software to public websites, such as the weather. And you can build custom connectors for virtually any modern software. And I did mention briefly in the last webinar, but if you've perhaps got some older software, legacy kit that doesn't quite live in the web or in the cloud yet, there are some tools in conjunction with data connectors and Power Automate that lets you connect up to legacy software and bridge them, so you can bring old software into the modern era through connecting them to the web. AI Builder we covered. It's how you bring in modern machine learning capabilities using low code. Microsoft Dataverse, a critical tool. Microsoft Dataverse is the typical database that powers most of these implementations. It is under the hood traditional SQL Server software, but again, it follows that low code pattern where we don't have to write code to create tables and procedures. We use a drag and drop interface, a visual interface, to create tables very quickly. It also comes with a lot more. It's more than just a database. It comes with security layers and processing and business rules and logic that can be easily put together very quickly and is a very powerful data store. Think of it as replacing Excel and Access, if anybody still does that, to give you a sort of halfway house between that and a pro database without having to learn how to be a SQL Server or database engineer. PowerFX is more of a expression and query language. The team that built it is the same team that created formulas in Excel. So if you're familiar with writing a formula in Excel, you'll be very familiar with PowerFX. It allows us to introduce logic and programming without actually having to program. But what I should mention is, although the Power Platform is low code and a lot of the AI capabilities that we've covered are low code, there's nothing to stop me from using professional coding level technology in it, not just integrating with it, but I can write code. I used to be a web developer. I do pull out JavaScript and C#. So this is a great set of tools to use in like a hybrid environment where you have low coders who tend to build fast, that don't learn traditional programming, and then you can bring your pro developers to the party as well, and they can all work together on the same technology and you find a good balance. Again, watch the recording for the last webinar if you'd like to learn a little bit more of that. And then lastly, managed environments, which is a critical part of what makes the platform a platform and why it's another low code capability. Is traditional development, when you're building, say, a website, you have to think about infrastructure. What's this going to run on? Where's it going to live? I need a server in the cloud. I need to have access via the internet. I need to create security layers. I need to install a database. Power Platform wraps all of that up, not only within the platform, but also within the licensing as well. So someone like me who would be building a solution doesn't have to worry about infrastructure or how people will connect, how they will sign in, how they will control their access. Managed environments gives you all of that. I can just roll up an environment, give it a new name. It's a self-contained environment, and then I can turn on the tools that I require, such as I will turn on Dataverse to store some information. I will have Power Apps to give me a mobile app to enter the information, and I will turn on Power BI because I want to read and analyze that data. It all lives within that environment. There are at least 50 other features under managed environments, such as the ability to plug in a Copilot agent out of the box that doesn't need to be trained. So if anybody would like to see an example of that, I have some apps that I've built and Copilot appears in a blade to the side and I can ask it questions about the data. That's available through managed environments, along with the ability to do ALM and DevOps and other pro level safety nets you would have. Now, I keep mentioning no code and low code, so I'll give a little bit more context about what that is. Why is it important? So I call myself a lazy developer. Yes, I can write code and I often do have to pull out some JavaScript and C#. But what I will do is I will avoid doing that as much as possible for one very good reason, is that it would save me a lot of time if I don't have to write code. As I mentioned, those managed environments cover things like infrastructure. Well, the apps themselves add features such as interfaces and menus that are very common to what people would expect to see. Why write a menu from scratch when there's one that's pre-built? I can just give it items and say, this is what I want in the menu. That's a low code implementation. There was a picture earlier of Power Automate as a workflow. It does robotic process automation. Yes, I could write code that connects all these things together, but if I can visually see it, it's a lot easier to explain to or with customers what it needs to do. Now, Microsoft has invested heavily in doing their own research, but also the likes of Forrester and Gartner, big business research names, have also done it. And what they found is that blending low-code Power Platform with traditional pro-code tools has shown that it will accelerate development processes by about 35%, which is not a small number to scoff at, given that when you invest money in technology, particularly bespoke or custom software, cost savings are important. In my experience, when I stay purely within the realm of Power Platform, I actually find that on average, I can build things in a third of the time a pro dev would. There's been examples where I've seen pro devs say, yeah, give me 3 weeks and I'll come back to you with a landing page and a login. I can do that in 5 days with the Power Platform by using low code, because a lot of that's already pre-built for me. I just need to configure it rather than code it, if that makes more sense. Another bit of research has been done via Microsoft is what's the point of automation? Why can't I just pay for more people to do manual tasks? Well, what they found is that if you automate tasks and you give people the ability to automate tasks that they do, you get on average a 25% reduction in the time to complete those tasks. Good example of that is perhaps somebody monitors a special shared mailbox to see when they get messages from other parts or other department. By using Power Automate to read them and automatically push them to the right person, or to log them in a spreadsheet or copy those invoices into a system, when you start taking on repetitive tasks, you get that cost saving, but it's snowball effect, because you constantly have that cost saving, and then you can enrich it and add more to it. So again, I found that the time to build these things typically a lot quicker than traditional development. So low code has an important place when it comes to failing fast, is a term that Apple would use. So building something quickly, giving it to the people that use it and getting their feedback. The fact that I can get, typically my average turnaround for working software is less than 2 weeks. I will put a piece of software in the hands of the users and go, tell me what you think. And then that way they can feed back to me changes that are required, what's working, what's not. Then that kind of cycle is a lot faster pace without any risk to the development of the tools. And Microsoft have invested very heavily in this. Microsoft Dynamics 365, particularly customer engagement, the former CRM, that's a low-code tool that birthed a lot of what we use. That is an enterprise-grade CRM tool. We're now using the same technology to build bespoke tools for the same benefits. Right, we're going to do some real-world examples. I don't know if anybody can click the button because it's on a slide, but all of these stories are available on Microsoft's Power Platform website. There are close to 100 now for all the different parts, so it's worth having a look if you want to see the success from some names. And I've tried to pick some well-known names, so it's a bit more tangible. So an example from Virgin Money, because I like this one. Virgin Money was experimenting with Copilot Studio to build a tool that would help them navigate the knowledge base. And what they found is that it was so good at doing that and allowing their employees to find information fast that they very quickly found a place to upgrade it slightly and then make it available to customers to do it. And the reason it did is it created a virtual assistant, not only for the employees but for customers to do work. And the screenshot there is actually an example of the dashboards I mentioned earlier, where it tells you the total number of users, sessions, what's the engagement and drop-off rate. So Virgin Money spent a lot of time looking at this dashboard when they realized how important it was for their staff and their colleagues to be better informed, which made them happy. But then they released this to their customers. And one of the notes I've got on here is they Copilot using NLP and AI, being able to understand what humans are saying. Virgin Money actually trained it on local colloquialisms. And the example they give in this story is that when someone said, "I've changed gaff," what they meant was, "I've moved house." But Copilot understood that, so it routed them to the process and asked them for their updated address details. And it's things, that little touches like that, the little human element that they put into it, actually increased their customer satisfaction score. So yeah, I've changed digs. It would understand that that just meant they'd moved house. That also meant that the handover or escalation rate dropped. So instead of it going to handing off to real customer service agents, they found I think it was 69% or something of the traditional requests from their customers were now being handled by the agent, which meant that the real people could focus on the more complicated things. People have perhaps, not just moved house, but they've remortgaged and bought a second property, or they wanted to transfer some money, things that the agent couldn't do yet. So it was that little human touch. Definitely worth going and reading about how a large financial company can implement something as simple as a chatbot, but also the story about how it moved on from just being a virtual assistant for the customer service team to actually becoming a customer service rep. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cineplex. I don't know if we have them in the UK, but it's a big American cinema system. They did a couple of things. Firstly, they built an automation center of excellence. Now, in my former life, I used to work for a large corporation, and one of my specialties was what's called center of excellence. I could help companies build their own Power Platform development teams. One of my proudest achievements is I trained 500 people at the Foreign Office in the UK how to leverage this technology. Now, Cineplex went and built their own center of excellence for automation. So that meant that they enabled these tools for the people in their business who weren't technology specialists. They were people who were specialists in their business, and essentially taught them and gave them access to the technology and how to use it. And one of the processes they developed was a ticket refund process. What they found is a lot of people calling up customer service or sending an email trying to get a refund for their ticket, but that process wasn't something they could just sign off. It had to go through checks. They had to prove that the ticket was valid, that the person didn't actually attend the viewing. It needed to be approved by a manager. So the users themselves, the experts in that process, built an automation that would do that. And not only did they create this automation that would do the approval process, but they actually attached it to a Copilot Studio agent, which they call their guest services agent. So now you could actually, instead of talking to the individual in customer service who would then have to load up a system to find information that proved the ticket and then send an approval to the finance department, can we have a refund? The agent could handle this. It still went through the same approvals. It wasn't a free-for-all. It didn't just automatically do it. But there's some features in Power Automate that Copilot was leveraging, which does an immutable system that allows you to approve from anywhere. It can be approved via your Outlook email, approved on Teams. You can approve in a text message. So it could go to a senior manager to say, yes, I'm happy to refund this $40 or whatever it was. They used a similar functionality. It then led on to like almost a snowball effect of the capabilities that they could start doing invoice payment processing with the same sort of thing. They'd receive an invoice from a supplier that would go to the person who perhaps purchased the supplies, but it would still have to go off and get approved by a manager and then off to finance. And they leveraged the same processes and technology. What was interesting about this story is the case study they did of both Power Platform and AI implementation saved 30,000 hours per year. So that's 30,000 person hours were saved. Now, depending on who's involved, you could do some calculations on the kind of cost that is to a business. But that was just this one or two implementations that led to this. Integrating of Power Automate and Copilot Studio gave them measurable time savings across their organization. And then I think the quote there is from President of Taxation and Treasury, that they couldn't believe the capabilities that really set it apart from other solutions. The fact that it had generative AI capabilities, it could understand human language. And I can only imagine, this is from a number of years ago, I can only imagine what they've done with it since. That once you find that opportunity, the thing about technology and solutions is when you find one opportunity, you start noticing others very quickly. And then our last example, Holland American Line, a cruise company, if I remember rightly. They did something similar with the chatbot. They wanted a customer experience, but rather than dealing with customer complaints and customer service, this was more like a sales concierge that would help guide them through their booking. So what they found is they offered, I can't remember how many it was, but it was something, several thousand possible products when it came to how you could structure your booking and additional services and the kind of questions that guests would ask for the cruise and the hotel side of the ships to do for them, that it was almost a minefield for an individual customer to navigate. So they created this Copilot that would work via the call center, via customer service and sales, but help them find what they were looking for. So they could ask it questions about the different holiday options and the cruise line. They could tell it what it liked, and it could make recommendations, which is, I mentioned briefly earlier, recommending other products or additional services is a great way to upsell and increase the value you get from your customers. This very much did that in a sort of hand-holding guidance. So rather than spending several hours on the phone, like you would perhaps to a travel agent, you'd go and talk to them and say, this is what I'm looking for, and they'd recommend it. You could sit in the comfort of your own home and talk to the chatbot, ask it what was available, what are the rooms like on this ship, what stops does it go to, tell me a bit about that country, that kind of stuff. And this is where they built it. What was interesting is their MVP was built within 3 months. So this, obviously, I'm talking about quite a large scale agent that covered a lot of areas, but 3 months is still a very fast time when you think about that was the MVP most minimum viable product, so a working piece of software, not a prototype. This was something that they could put in front of customers. And that's 3 months, and that's how they delivered it. The deep telemetry on analytics, so this is critical when you have high volume interactions with customers, is you want to learn from them. That by using the Copilot in a way that humans couldn't do, is they could track what questions people are asking, where were they getting stuck on decisions, where was there too many choices, and it was all that information they gathered, which was then stored in the Power Platform, and using Power BI, they analyzed it, allowed them to learn and refine and enrich both this tool itself, but also their products and their engagement. They called it Anna, which I don't know if that's on there. They named it Anna. So they gave life to this AI agent by giving it a name, Anna the co-pilot. They said it improved customer engagement. Customers spent longer with them rather than getting frustrated with all those choices. They actually spent more time going through it. And they highlighted how this guided customer experience relieved pressure on their call center. And like I said, I gave them those deep telemetry analytics. So certainly worth looking up that kind of implementation, because it's different to dealing with complaints or service issues. This was how do customers buy from this company. So I'll pause there now. I will open up to some questions. I can't turn on the microphones, so it's probably good for some people, but I can see the chat. If anybody would like to ask any questions about that, what they've covered, please dive into the chat. I will ad lib. Luckily, I won't sing for you, but I will try and fill in some more information. Examples, the types of models, what's the difference between Copilot and ChatGPT, any other benefits. I've put in some contentious examples on there as well, because that's always interesting. Will this replace my staff? Yes and no, depends on what you're trying to do with it. And I've already mentioned that this isn't tied just to Microsoft. You can interact with third-party tools. And if anybody would like a private follow-up, one-to-one deep dive, then please reach out either via info, via this, or you can always find me on LinkedIn. In fact, somebody has messaged me on LinkedIn as well. Oh, I'm being followed. I've got a connection request, so thank you, Amira. I'll accept that now. And if anybody wants to share what their bank holiday weekend plans are, by all means, please do. My son is turning 1 this weekend. Oh, I've got a hand up. I don't know if I can turn on your mic. I will try. Allow microphone. Hello, are you there, Amira?
Yeah, hello, nice for the talk. I was just recently released a project related to this. I also belong part of the Microsoft Azure AI training for University of Warwick. And
hello.
I really, yeah, I really amused by all the support that will provide it. But my question it is because I was doing this presentation for SBE, and they asked me this. Will it be possible to translate all the data that we are support in these solutions to a proper platform that they are gonna tailor for themselves in the next future? Do you know if there is experience about it? Or do you think we need to keep all the data in the cloud for Microsoft and it will work in this same way for the long term?
If I understand your question, is it the telemetry, like the usage data? Is that what you're asking about?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so that is typically available via their administration tools, which do not have the most friendly way of downloading and accessing it. That said, you can connect to that data with Power BI, so you can then analyze it, and Power BI does create the ability for you to download that data. So if I'm answering your question correctly, the data isn't stuck in the cloud. You can download it and then take it somewhere else. If you want to go and use Google, or perhaps use Tableau to analyze it, perhaps you want to do a bit more predictive analytics, that is possible if you use the tools in the right way to collate it. Just the question is, why would you do that? Because most of it's there. Perhaps you want to marry that information of how people use the software with perhaps their survey results and that sort of analytics. So you can do that. We can guide you. Does that answer your question, or have I misunderstood?
Yeah, it's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I've had similar problems and similar questions in the past. It's not impossible. It's just Microsoft, they give you all that information, but they don't make it easy for you to download it, which is really sad. Could it be used to scan, read, and input things such as data from an analytical balance? I'm going to have to pretend I know what an analytical balance is. I'm going to guess it's some kind of scientific tool, because I know Kate works in a lab. We're in the Stone Age, all data is still stored in Excel, right? Firstly, Excel is a great data source. for the Power Platform. It's very easy to extract data from Power Apps. In fact, I'll give you a very brief AI story that there's now a new feature of Power Apps, so the tools for building applications, well, it's existed for quite a while, but you could feed it a spreadsheet and it will automatically build an app from that spreadsheet because it recognizes the data. So instead of entering a line on an Excel spreadsheet, you could have an app built within less than 5 minutes that does that. It's now come a long way with AI. You don't even need the spreadsheet. You can just talk to it with natural language and say, build me an app that records this information. If it's a bit of software or it's perhaps a bit of hardware that has a software interface, the data must somehow get from that reading and scanning and inputting into a spreadsheet. It's very likely you can either tap into that data stream itself. If not, the Excel spreadsheet that gets written, I have built tools that read from that spreadsheet and then pulls it into Dataverse or into SQL Server, which is a professional database. So there's lots of options for getting information from your lab equipment and the other sources, even if they are very old. Okay, yes, so once we've weighed something out, balance prints out the reading, we're manually inputting. Right, okay, I see. When you say it prints out, does it like a receipt or a piece of paper or something that comes out? It would be possible to scan that with your phone. Yes, paper. So yeah, I'm now imagining something from CSI. I think you're in forensic science, if I remember rightly. So you put something in a piece of hardware, it weighs, and out comes a piece of paper. Yes, you could use your phone. You could have a Power App that reads the receipt, that would automatically pick up the numbers that are on that piece of paper. Pharma research. Okay, I was close. You could use your phone to scan that. It would be able to pick up other information, not just the weight. It might be I imagine there's a unique ID to whatever that experiment or weight was, and you could have your phone route that into a back office system and it would fill out the spreadsheet for you if you still need it. But most people, once they've got rid of the spreadsheet, find a better way of reporting that data, whether that's in a live dashboard. And there are several. I mentioned Power BI, but Power Apps actually has its own built-in dashboarding. Again, if anybody would like an example, I've got some CRM style tools I've built that deal with things like HR and customer service. We have a dashboard in there because it's a good way for humans to ingest data quickly. You could have it do that, or you could have it produce a Word document and put that data into a table. There's lots of options there. Or, as we've covered in this session, lots of AI tools, machine learning. Perhaps if you spent an entire day weighing things and capturing data, you might want to get an average weight or process that information. So yeah, you could very much bridge the technological gap with the lo-fi, low tech by scanning stuff. That's where computer vision would come in with AI Builder, Power Apps to scan it, and then Power Automate to send that information wherever it needs to go. Do we have any other questions? I'm just having a quick scan in here. I've just reread Vince's comment, no screen for you. That's another person, so terrible news. I'm sorry about that. I will make sure it gets uploaded this afternoon, and I will reach out to you and Craig, who I imagine has not come on, got the screen on. I will send it to you so you can see my slide deck. Okay, I did well.
Sorry, Simon. Just the last question. Now that you mentioned about SQL Server, would you provide us a summary approach? What will be the best difference between these tools used?
Okay, between SQL Server and Dataverse?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Okay. Well, a secret for you that Microsoft doesn't tell anybody, but Dataverse underneath the interfaces that we use is SQL Server. It's the same technology, but there's some significant differences. To call Dataverse a database, like SQL Server is a database, is kind of not doing it justice. Yes, its primary use is to build relational data structures, and underneath it is SQL Server, but Dataverse offers you a whole host of other features and functionality. So, for example, it has an entire security layer built on top of it. And when I say security layer, it allows you to create custom roles. So you could have an administrator, a user, a manager, and you can fine tune what data people can access, how they can access it, what they can do when they can access it. So that's an entire layer of data. You can create virtual partitions, which mean, let's say we have an entire company with 4 different departments and we store everything in Dataverse, but HR wants to make sure that people's personnel files are private and only HR can see them. That exists in Dataverse. By using low-code technologies, I can click a few buttons, create a special rule that says only members of the HR team can see my date of birth and my bank account details. So that's one of the functions. It has other tools for processes like business rules. So I can create a rule that says whenever someone enters a postcode, they must also add a street name. And that could be a rule. Now, it doesn't matter how you access the data, whether you use a Power App, Power BI, or you write some third-party pro code, that business rule will be automatically applied to that data. So if you create a new address, you put in a postcode, the rule will go, you also need to tell me a street name. So you can create rules that govern your data and how it should be used, that no matter how people access the data applies. There are certain backup functionality that's built into it. So I mentioned managed environments. So Dataverse automatically backs up 24 hours worth of data. You can roll back to an hour. With SQL Server, you can do that, but you have to program it and you have to set up third-party tools and you have to export it to the cloud. Dataverse, it all lives within there, and you can extend that up to 30 days. So and I could talk literally for 4 hours on all the different features. So if you look at Dataverse as an individual product, it does so much more for people like me that build solutions than SQL Server does. SQL Server, I have to code everything. If I want a table, I've got to write create table and give it a name. If I want columns, I've got to add column and create them. I've got to tell it data types. For Dataverse, I can tell AI, give me a table called people. It needs to have a first name, last name, and a date of birth column. And it'll just build it for me. And I say, right, I need to create a rule that says that Simon, he's only a manager, so he can create stuff, but he can't delete them. And Amira, you're the administrator, so you can create and delete. And I can do all of that in probably less than 5 minutes. If I wanted to do the same thing in SQL Server, it would take me about 3 hours because I'd have to write the code, create it. I'd have to go and spin up a server to hold it. So yeah, they are very different when it comes to functionality. There are some limitations to Dataverse, and I think it's around 10 million rows or something. It might be 100 million rows now, whereas SQL Server would be better if you're building something much larger. Generally speaking, Dataverse is very quick, but where I'd say it would be failing is if you were doing something like stocks or financial data, very large volumes, thousands of rows moving and changing, streaming at one time, you would need SQL Server for that because SQL Server can have more compute power given to it and its read and writes are much faster. Whereas for Dataverse, as I mentioned, you can put rules and security in there. So it means when you read a bit of data, to the user, it's very quick. But if you were doing large volumes of data, it would be very slow. So if you were doing, another one is if you need to do distributed data. So we'll use social media platforms. They have, 100 million users of Facebook. They don't have one database. They have hundreds of databases created all over the world in different data centers. SQL Server is very good at replicating itself and doing distributed data. Dataverse is just one database and it lives within the server you commission it in. So I would pick a region. I don't want to get too deep into how Azure Region works, but generally speaking, there's 2 data centers in the UK, London and Cardiff. That's the UK regions. If I create an environment for Power Platform, I will pick London or Cardiff, or it's South UK and West UK, and that's where it will physically live. So if I'm building an app for people in the UK, that's great because they've only got the internet to travel from where I am in Warwick to London. It's very fast. But if I had someone over I had some staff of mine used to work in Slovakia and they had to use the app that's based in London, they get that latency on the internet. SQL Server, you can distribute it. You can have a copy of the database in Slovakia and one in London, and we would connect to our local one, but they would sync up over the internet. So yeah, from a use case point of view, if you want to build a database fast because you're building a productivity app for a business that's in one country, Dataverse is so much better. It's faster. You'll do stuff in minutes instead of days. But if you're building large distributed databases or high volume data like financial systems, stock trackers, perhaps Kate in pharma research probably deals with large volumes of data when it comes to the scientific experiments, you might find that SQL Server is better. And I forgot to mention, you can use one or both. You don't have to pick one or the other. It's not a hard and fast rule. You can actually create tables in Dataverse that are virtual tables, and they're actually linking to SQL Server. So the reason you would do that is to make the model simpler to understand. So you might have an entire, I don't know, financial catalog of products in Dataverse, but the actual financial data lives in SQL Server. So you can create a virtual table, makes it really easy to communicate and use it in an app and do analytics and stuff, but the data actually lives in SQL Server somewhere else. So it's not one or other, it can be both. Or you can just use SQL Server. Some people do that. For example, if you already built some software, and it uses SQL Server, and maybe it's got an internet web-based app that connects to it, but you want to build some functionality on the side because there's a couple of people in a department that need to do a little bit. I'm trying to think of an example. Perhaps you've got a social media app called Facebook, and it's got tons of data in a database and people connect to it through an app on their phone. Perhaps there's some data research team sat in Los Angeles that just want to look at a small subset of data and they don't want to use the app. You could build a Power App that connects to Facebook's data and they could just use that. And that's a very common use case. You've got people that have got big third-party bits of software or software they've built themselves, and it'd be too expensive to add a new feature to it. So they just go to Power Apps and they connect up to it and they just use the existing platform that's all built by a professional developer. It's a website with a database and it all lives on a server in the cloud. And that cloud could be a Google or Amazon Web Services or Azure. But they just want a little app that allows them to, let's say Kate's example of scanning a printout and adding data to it. It would take 2 weeks to add a page to the web app, but it would take 2 days to create a Power App that connects to it. So there's another use case there for the platform, and the same thing applies to AI. So I'm trying to get back on topic. That perhaps you want to add some machine learning with AI Builder. You've got an existing platform that was built on some other technology by professional developers, team of 10 over in America, but you want to just sort of do a bit of scanning of receipts and do some computer vision. You can introduce Power Automate, AI Builder, plug in the process to the side of that tool, and that way you're extending the capabilities. You're using low code, so you're saving time and money, but you haven't had to rewrite all your software or move to another platform. So there you go, Myra. Hopefully that's a really long-winded way of answering your question. Thank you, Tom. You're very kind. Any other questions? Any more? I've got plenty of time, but I realise it's almost bank holiday. So people, and the sun has come back where I am in Warwick. So hopefully all of you are now looking out your windows thinking, how quick can I finish work? Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Amira, connect with me on the NatWest Accelerator app if you're on there. And if not, please bump into me when we're at the uni. It'd be nice to meet you. And yeah, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Amira. Thank you very much. So yeah, have a good bank holiday weekend all, and look out for this on YouTube.